Steve Jobs has been dead for 15 years. People have various opinions about him, about his genius, his cruelty, his turtlenecks. But one thing is just a fact. Apple is one of the most valuable companies on the planet. However, in 1997, Apple lost $1 billion in a single year.
We've stumbled recently.
The company was reportedly 90 days from bankruptcy. The CEO of Dell publicly suggested Apple should shut itself down and return the money to shareholders. This was not seen as a particularly controversial take.
It's dead, right?
Today, Apple makes $1 billion every 3 days. So, what happened? Is it exceptional innovation, brand marketing and design, technology choices, customer lock-in and ecosystem control? Yeah, kind of. But all of those things are just symptoms of something else. There is one idea behind all of them. And a man, who had been famously fired from Apple 11 years earlier, explained it for a hostile audience already in the summer of 1997. The concept of a product. This is bad business. Summer 1997. Apple's annual developer conference, San Jose. Jobs has just returned, not as a CEO yet, as an advisor. No keynote, no slides. He sits down and takes questions from a room full of developers whose businesses depend on Apple surviving. Many of them are not convinced it will. For 45 minutes, the questions range from technical to frustrated to hostile. Then one developer stands up.
Mr. Jobs, you're a bright and influential man.
Here it comes.
It's sad and clear that on several counts you've discussed, you don't know what you're talking about.
Delivers a pointed critique about Apple killing of certain technologies, and ends with,
You're finished with that. Perhaps you could tell us what you personally have been doing for the last 7 years.
Jobs doesn't bite back. He acknowledges the guy has some valid points. And then he says something that would quietly become the blueprint for everything Apple did for the next 2 decades.
You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going to try to sell it. You've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology.
You have to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology, not the other way around. This is not a motivational line for a poster. This is the product philosophy. And it maps almost perfectly onto one of the most useful but often neglected frameworks in the field. A successful product has to satisfy 3 conditions simultaneously. First, the product must be technologically feasible, meaning you can actually make it. The technology and capability must exist. Second, the product must be a part of a viable business. The economics must work. You have to afford to build it, sell it, sustain it, and probably even make some money. In other words, the business case should be positive. And third, the product must be desirable, meaning people actually want it. Not in theory, in practice. They pay for it, change their habits for it, tell others about it. Most tech companies in the 1990s started with feasibility. Here's what we can build. Now who wants it? Sounds logical. The problem is that feasibility is a terrible filter for desirability. Technically impressive does not mean genuinely wanted or even useful. The graveyard of tech history is full of things that were brilliantly engineered and completely ignored. One could think that building impressive things nobody wants is just bad business. But hey, I'm just a recovering economics grad. What do I know? Jobs was saying, flip it. Start with desirability. What experience does the customer need and where do we want to take them? Only then work backwards towards business and technology questions. Feasibility and viability becomes constraints, not starting points. The old Apple had done it the other way. Great engineering, confusing products nobody asked for. By 1997 they had dozens of models, variations of things that weren't selling, and a culture that celebrated technical complexity over customer clarity. And they were failing. So what happens when you actually flip it?
$500 fully subsidized with a plan? I said, that is the most expensive phone in the world, and it doesn't appeal to business customers because it doesn't have a keyboard, which makes it not a very good email machine.
Here's the thing about computers in 1997. They were built by computer people for computer people.
Developers, 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 developers.
You know, people who doesn't mind spending a whole afternoon setting up a printer. The machines were beige boxes with phone book thick user manuals. The problem was that by 1998, most computer users weren't computer people. They were just people. People who wanted to get on the internet, write a document, send an email.
It's that simple.
The market had outgrown the product, but nobody did anything about it. Jobs noticed, or more precisely, Jobs asked the right question first. Not what can we build, but who is actually sitting in front of these things and what do they need? The answer was the iMac. Translucent blue, one cable, plug in, turn on, online in minutes. A handle because it's yours and you can move it. No floppy drive because the future doesn't need one. iMac became the best-selling computer in America when launched in 1998. This from a company that was 90 days from bankruptcy the previous year. And he kept applying it. The iPod wasn't the first MP3 player. The iPhone was the first touchscreen phone. But both were the first versions designed for people that was going to use them rather than people who built them. Even though not everybody was convinced. Same method, bigger results every time. Every company says it's customer-centric. It's basically required on strategy slides. But there's a concrete difference between two questions that sound similar. Do our customers like what we built? Comes after. You have built it, now you are checking. Versus what experience do we want customers to have and what do we need to build for that comes before. Everything else follows. The first treats disability as a test, the second treats it as a brief. This is all just common sense really. You would do it instinctively if you were making something for someone you actually knew. The mystery is why it is so rare in organizations. Proof of point. Most companies are not Apple. Jobs said in a room in 1997 he'd made the technology first mistake more than anyone. But him overcoming that made Steve Jobs, and not one of the random dudes that happened to make computers in the 70s nobody remembers. Oh, and one more thing. I've been making these videos based entirely on what I know how to make, rather than what anyone has actually asked to watch, which, given everything I just said, is a little embarrassing. But what do you think? Is your organization actually starting from the customer or from what it can build? Let me know in the comments. In the next episode, we look at why this kind of product thinking might be the one skill that survives the AI wave, and why that's actually good news. Subscribe to this channel not to miss out. And while you are there, please click that thumb button. It means a lot to this small channel. Thank you. Best regards, bad business.